Ms. Wizzie Brown from Texas A&M Agrilife Extension, we thank you for coming to talk to us today about this. You guys, we have two moderators. We have Vicki Bertinelli and Dr. Tim Davis in the chat box. So go ahead and enter those questions and they'll get them answered for you. And so, Ms. Wizzie, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself if you're ready.
I am ready. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to talk about termites today, and I am taking this in a general sense. There's a lot of different ways things are done across the United States for termite treatments, but there's also a lot of similarities with some general stuff. So I'm hoping to arm you with some information, so if you happen to discover termites, then you will have an idea of where to go from there. So this is probably the big what that I get from most people, is that termites are actually related to cockroaches. And that being said, they are actually within the cockroach order. So cockroaches fall in the order of Latodia, and they used to be in two separate groups. Termites were in Isoptera, but they did some genetic stuff and it showed that termites actually fall within the cockroach group. And the link that they have is the cockroaches that are the Cryptocercidae, which are cockroaches that actually live in wood. And you can see them on the upper right of the slide there. And these have a subsocial behavior, so they're not true social insects like the termites are, which we'll talk about what that means in a minute. They also live in wood, they will eat wood, and they also have a coprophagy, which is essentially eating fecal material, and that is a way that they share gut organisms that they need to help digest cellulose, which is something that the termites are also going to do. So termites are eusocial insects, and essentially that means that they are true social insects, and there is a division of labor that they have within the colony. So each termite group has a specific job or group of jobs that they are responsible for. They also have overlapping generations, so you can find multiple ages of termites within the colony at any given time. And then there's also cooperative care of the young. They are also going to feed on cellulose material, so that is wood and paper products. So even if you think that a structure doesn't have wood in it, usually there's something that contains cellulose within that structure. It could be beams that are underneath a house. It could be structures or form boards that were laid. I've seen them eat paper off of sheetrock before. So there's all different types of material that they can feed on if they happen to locate a structure to eat there. So termites, generally, when they attack our stuff, yes, they are a pest in that sense, but they do have a place in nature. And when we think about termites, we need to think about how this looked, years and years and years ago when we weren't building houses all over the place. So if we have trees falling down in the forest, how does that stuff decompose? Termites fit into that decomposer structure. They're going to help break down that wood material that is naturally occurring in those type of areas. And so when we then entered into those areas and decided to use that timber to create homes and other structures, well, then we started to have to deal with termites as a pest, because in that sense, then they are getting into an area that we don't really want them to be in, and we don't really want them feeding on our house. I don't want them feeding on my house. So they're going to become a pest when they actually feed on items that we want to keep intact and not have damaged. So this is usually the $20,000 question here on this slide. Ants, a lot of the ants and a lot of the termites will swarm under similar conditions and at similar times of the year. And so when we start having swarming insects, it's always the question about, well, are they ants swarming or are they termites swarming? And a lot of times it may be both, but they're usually not both happening in the same exact area. But you can take a look at the insect, and if you know some key characteristics to look for, then you can tell if you have an ant or if you have a termite. And we are going to call them, I have swarmers on here. Another word for a swarmer, those are the ants that come up out of the ground and swarm, so hence the name swarmers. We also call them alates, and essentially that just means that they have wings, and they have wings when they come up out of the ground, and they will launch themselves into the air, and they'll fly around and they'll find a mate. And when they come back down to the ground, when we're talking about termites, they can actually shed their wings. And when we talk about ants, then generally they will chew their wings off. So after they have done what they need to do in the air, they will lose those wings. So at that point, they are still considered swarmers, but they do not have the wings any longer. So when we look at this slide, our ants are going to be on the left side and our termites are going to be on the right. So what we want to look at is the different characteristics. So we want to look at antennae. So on the termite, the antennae are going to be straight. And when you look at the ant's antennae, they are going to be bent, or what we call elbowed. So essentially, if you hold up your arm at a right angle, your elbow makes that right angle. That's why we call that elbowed antennae. And you can see that here on the drawing down at the bottom. The other thing that we're going to look for next is we're going to look at the waist. And the waist on ants is going to be a narrowed waist, or constricted or pinched, or whatever you want to say. On termites, it is not narrow or constricted. It is broadly joined. So the thorax is here, and then we have our abdomen here. The next thing that you can look at, if they still have their wings attached, are the wings. So if you look at wings of termites, they are going to be of equal size and shape. So the front wings are going to pretty much look like the hind wings, and you can see how they all kind of just blend in together. But if we look at ants, the front wing is going to be much larger than the hind wing. So the hind wing is pretty much smaller, and then the front wing is larger. So antenna, waist, wings. Once you get that down, you'll be able to tell your termite swarmers from your ant swarmers. So the problem is you may not always see them swarming. You may actually find other types of termites, and those are going to be the different castes. So if we look at the life cycle of the termite, we talked about the alates, or the reproductives, also known as the swarmers. So they're the ones that are going to have wings. And these are going to lose their wings once they have flown into the sky and mated. And then when they come to the ground, they lose their wings, and they will shed those wings. And they will then kind of pair up, and the male will follow the female around. And then they will find a place where they can actually start a new colony. And then the queen will start laying eggs. And you can see that they kind of have changed. So you have your male here still, and you have your female, or your queen. And she will eventually get larger than the other termites. You can see her abdomen expands. And that is essentially to be able to produce those eggs. So you can see that is pretty much her job in the colony, is to produce those eggs and offspring. So when we get those eggs hatching, we get these little immature or nymph termites, and they are just going to be small and soft bodied, and you can see it over here on the right as well. And sometimes those are called embryos, sometimes they're called first instar nymphs. And then those are going to pretty much eat, poop, and grow. That's what they need to do. and they will turn into second instar, third instar, and then they get into these older stages. And you can start seeing when they are going to be male or female once they reach these later instars. When they reach the 7th instar, which you see over here at the top, when they're going into that next molt, they have the, I guess, option or choice or whatever. It's not necessarily a choice, but they can either go into a nymph, where they are going into the reproductive stage, or they can go into a pre-soldier stage, and then those will turn into soldiers. So depending on which way it's going to go, it'll have a different ending there. The nymphs or the suitorgates are going to be the ones that are the workers, and those are ones that usually people are used to seeing when you see termites. They always say, I saw these little soft-bodied white things, or they say they saw white lice in wood or something. That's usually the description that we get. So those are going to be the worker termites, and pretty much all of those look alike. When we are identifying termites, we need to have the reproductives, or we need to have the soldiers. And that is so we can tell what kind is actually causing an issue. So when we're looking at caste structure, like I said, this means that pretty much every caste or every grouping has a job to do. And this is regulated by pheromones that are given off by the queen of the colony. And if you have that queen die, or if the colony gets so large that part of it is out of that range of the pheromone, then there's going to be supplementary reproductives produced by the colony. And essentially that's going to be a king and a queen that kind of develop out of those immature termites, as you saw in the previous slide. And that is to compensate to make sure that that colony is going to be able to continue. And I should backtrack and say that pheromones are going to be chemical cues that are given off by insects so they can communicate with one another. And these particular pheromones are going to be ones that kind of control all of the stuff in the colony and lets everybody know that everything is good to go. So the worker caste, or the suitorgates, those are the soft-bodied, wingless termites. These are typically the largest proportion in the colony, so you can see a big chunk of them over here. These are made up of males and females. They're all immatures, and they do the work. They're the workers. So they clean, they maintain, they repair the nest. They'll gather food and water that's needed. They'll care for the young. They groom the king and queen. They construct any tunnels or galleries. And as I mentioned previously, these can molt into either soldiers or reproductives. When we look at the soldier caste, these are, again, going to be soft-bodied and wingless, but these are going to differ because they have a hardened head capsule. You can see there are different makeups of the head capsule. Those may look different, but if you see that hardened head capsule, then those be soldiers, and we can use those for identification. So if you see those, grab them and preserve them in rubbing alcohol, and it will to preserve the characteristics of the insect, and we would be able to take a look at them when they are brought in for identification. So these are typically larger than the workers. There is a smaller proportion of these within the colony, and these are generally there to defend the colony. They will protect the colony from invaders. So these are going to have generally two forms. You can either have those like you see in the top two photos here that have enlarged mandibles, or there are some that have this little horn that you see on the bottom left photo. And that one is actually going to have a gland in the head that has defensive chemicals that they can squirt out of that little horn. And these have to be taken care of by the workers. They're not capable of really caring for themselves because of the way that the head is constructed. It doesn't allow them to do a whole lot of stuff other than protect the other termites. So when we look at the different types of termites that we have, this is just to kind of give you a size reference. of the more common ones that you may see. On the far left are definitely the largest ones. Those are the dampwood termites. Next to that, we have drywood termites, and then we have subterranean termites. And then the red arrow actually shows the size of agricultural termites, which we have in some parts of the United States. And we'll talk more about these different termites in a few minutes. The reproductive casts are going to be, again, soft-bodied. They may or may not have wings, depending on if you're seeing primary reproductives or supplementary reproductives, or at what stage they're in that whole swarming period. And these are generally going to be darker in color. They're usually not a whitish color. Usually they are more of a tannish brown to even black sometimes. And there are going to be kings and queens. And these are going to be the adults in the colony generally. They're the ones that are able to reproduce and produce offspring. All right, so when we look at our actual termites, I break them into two basic groups. We have termites that actually live in wood, and that could be termites that are nesting in damp, rotten wood, or termites that are in dry wood. And those are going to be two different groups. And these are generally going to have smaller colonies. And then we have those that will actually tunnel in soil, which are subterraneans. And these will move around to find new food sources. And these colonies can get much larger than the other colonies. So the subterranean termites, when we are looking at these, again, we're looking at soldiers or alates, which are also known as reproductives or swarmers. The soldiers are going to have that square head on a lot of the native subterranean termites. And then if you look at their mandibles, which are these black things right here, if you look on the inside of that, they do not have teeth. And I'll show a closer picture of that because it's difficult to see in this particular photo. And then the alates are going to have two heavy veins on the front edge of the wing. So this top edge of the wing is going to have two veins. And you can actually see that right here on this termite. You can see those two heavy veins right there on the wing. When we look at the Formosan subterranean termite, which causes a lot of problems in certain parts of the US, these are also ones that are found in soil, but these have soldiers that have a teardrop or an oval shaped head. And a lot of times when you see these, especially if they're dead, their mandibles will cross over one another and kind of form an X. So the alates here are going to look very similar. They also have two heavy veins on that front part of the wing, but these are going to have hairs on their wings, which you may not be able to see with the naked eye. It's kind of difficult to discern that. But if you have a good hand lens or certainly a microscope, then you're going to be able to see those hairs, and that will give you that identification. Drywood termites, for the soldiers here, they are going to have a square head, and then the mandibles, you can really see those on this slide. You can see these have teeth. So they're not teeth like we have teeth. These are just kind of like little notches that come out on the mandibles. The alates on these termites are going to have 3 heavy veins instead of 2 on the front edge of their wing. And then the other big characteristic on the wing venation is that they have cross veins between those heavy veins. So what a cross vein is it's essentially a vein that runs perpendicular to the other one. So you have these elongated veins running down the wings. The cross veins would run parallel to that. Or I'm sorry, perpendicular to that. The other thing, and a big character that a lot of people will use to tell that they have drywood termites, is the frass, or the waste material of them. And these are essentially fecal pellets. And a lot of times if you tap on wood that is infested with drywood termites, these little pellet things will fall out of the wood. And if you look closely at them, this is what they're going to look like. They have these little indentations on the fecal pellets from where they have squeezed the moisture out, and it essentially is producing that very hard pellet because they have taken in all of the moisture that they can. Dampwood termites, the soldiers here are going to have a square-shaped head. They also have mandibles that have teeth, or those notches. And if you look at the pronotum, which is this little shield-shaped structure behind the head, they have a very wide pronotum compared to the other termites. And you can see that the rest of the thorax and abdomen is kind of more narrowed than that. The alates here are going to differ widely, as they have 5 of these really heavy veins on their wing coming back. You can see all of those heavy veins. So that really differentiates. And plus, these termites are huge compared to the other ones. But unless you work with termites a lot, you know, whether a termite is large or small is all subjective. But if you're somebody that knows termites, you can look at a termite and be like, whoa, that's enormous. Okay, so when we look at the soldier mandibles, we're looking at the different families. So our subterranean termites, which is the top one, these are going to have those smooth mandibles on the inside. You can see that they don't have any teeth on them on the inside. Whereas the rest of these, the drywood, the dampwoods, and the desert or agricultural termites, they are going to have those dentations or teeth on the mandibles there. And then this is just to show you alate size again, just to get a general idea. So we have dampwoods, which are very, very large. We have our drywoods here in the middle, and then our subterraneans are on the right-hand side. And then this is just to show you wings. So we have dampwood at the top, drywood next, and you can see their wings are kind of a smoky brown as compared to the subterranean termites, which are more pale or translucent. But again, unless you're looking at lots and lots of termites, that's difficult to tell unless you do that a lot. And this is a general key. I put this up here. That way you have it as a reference. If you need to go back and look at this webinar, once we put it back on the website, you can pull this up and you can take a look at this. But this shows you we're looking at the wing venation on these things. We're also looking at wing scales, and that's essentially the little part here at the base of the wing that is left behind attached to the termite after they shed the wings. And then the other thing that we haven't talked about yet that we do need to know about is this fontanelle. And that is essentially this little gland that appears on the head of some termites. And you can see that it's going to be on these particular termites over here, but not on the others. All right, so swarming. This is when it's going to happen. It's typically on warm days after a rain event. It doesn't always have to be a rain event. I have seen them swarm after somebody has left their sprinklers on for too long, so that is a possibility as well. And these are going to be the reproductives that are ready to go out, and they'll fly into the air, they'll find other termites, they will mate, fall to the ground, and that's when they will shed their wings, pair up, and the males and females will then go find a new place to start a new colony. So the first batch typically has about 6 to 12 eggs in it, and once those kind of hatch out and get into that nymphal stage, then those are going to be cared for by the older offspring, and she will then go into only egg laying mode. So the other way that a new colony can form is if we have a colony split off or get separated from the initial colony, and that would be if there's, you know, some sort of obstruction made in between the colony and the other group of termites. Then they can produce those secondary or tertiary, the supplementary reproductives. And that is what we call budding. So it's just like a, you know, like a tree. It like has an offshoot, and so that is budding off from that initial colony. So termite foraging, we're kind of unsure how it works exactly because it's very difficult to track termites when they're underground. We have different ways that we try to do it, but we're still working on figuring out the exact ways. And essentially, we think that they're going out, they're looking for food, and when they find food, they'll take some of that back to the colony to recruit other termites to come and get food from that food source. And again, this is using pheromones, which are those chemical cues that they use to communicate. So foraging range can really vary for termite groups depending upon what is available in the general area. So if you have them wandering around and your house is like 2 feet away from the colony, and you know a fallen down fence is 15 feet from the colony, then they are more likely to find the house than they are the fence. But it's kind of done in a random manner, so we don't know exactly where they're going underground and all that stuff. Something that you may see on a structure is what you see on the left-hand side there on the picture, and that is known as a mud tube or a shelter tube. And this is a mixture of soil or wood along with fecal material from the termites, and these will provide protection when subterranean termites are going from the soil up into the structure. So here's our mud tube. It has been broken open right here, and you can see the termites sticking out. You have a worker on the right and then a soldier there on the left. So if you see a mud tube on your house, something that you can do is break that mud tube off and look for active termites. If you don't see active termites, then I would go back after about a week and see if you have another shelter tube there. And if you do, then that is going to be a sign that you have termite activity in the area. So other ways that you can look for signs of infestation, you can look for wings of swarmers, which you see in this bottom right picture. As I said, the swarmers will shed their wings. So a lot of times those wings will collect in light fixtures. They'll collect on windowsills, near doors and windows that have light coming in because they're going to be attracted to that light. You can look for those mud or shelter tubes, and those can either be on the outside of the structure. They can be on pier and beams. If you have a pier and beam house, you can have them actually inside wall voids, as you see in this upper left-hand picture. The other thing you can look for is damaged wood or mud like this. This is a windowsill that was leaking, and there was termites actually in the windowsill from where that wood was damaged. More wood damage. This is on the outside of a structure, this upper left-hand picture, and you can see the termites have been eating away behind the party plank there. Down on the right-hand side, this picture right here, that shows a carton nest, which is created by Formosan termites. And they will create that a lot of times in wall void areas, and it helps them kind of maintain moisture up in that wall void. And so you can look, if you see that carton nest, that's another sign. You can look for damaged wood. This is kind of serious damaged wood. We already talked about looking for the drywood termite pellets. So here's one where you see they're infesting the wall and they're kicking out those pellets. So this is a good sign that you have termites nearby. The other one is other kick-out holes. So here, this is a doorway inside a structure, and this is the sheetrock, and they are actually creating holes coming out of the sheetrock. So if you see something like that, you might want to look a little more closely at that area. You can also get some equipment or hire somebody that has equipment like moisture meters or probes. And these will allow you to detect certain areas to make sure that the wood is sound in those areas. You can check for moisture problems in certain areas, and you can check for water damage. Obviously, that bottom picture, that you can tell that there's water damage, but not all water damage is going to be like that. If you have something that's just beginning, it may not be staining yet, so it may be something that you need to actually get a moisture meter and kind of see if there's a leak somewhere in a wall, because if that's the case, you would need to repair that as soon as you can. Let's see, inside you also want to look at any cracks that you may have. A lot of times you may have the slab crack, and that may not be discovered until you start remodeling or something and you pull up carpeting and then you see the foundation has cracked. Any expansion joints, if you have added on or you've had an addition made to your home, when they are pouring that slab or foundation, they will create an expansion joint, and usually they will put wood in there and they kind of a lot of times leave it there. So that is another area where termites can come up into the structure and you may never know about it. So you want to kind of know where those are so you can actually look at those kind of on a somewhat regular basis. You also want to look at any blistering that you see in paint, like you see in that upper left-hand picture, or wallboard, sheetrock, whatever. Check any floor coverings. A lot of times, especially on wood floors or parquet wood floors, you can get down on level with the floor and you can see any areas that are kind of bumpy looking. And those may be areas that you want to probe a little bit further to detect if there is softness underneath, that there may be termite damage or water damage or something like that. Plumbing is another huge area where you need to look around. If you have the capability, I would recommend that you install a bath trap. You can't, or not a bath trap, I'm sorry. You want to install a hatch where that plumbing access is, so you can actually remove that off and you can inspect that on a regular basis. So a lot of people don't know about construction. So when a foundation is being poured, you have the pipes put into the bath and toilets and all the plumbing type areas, and they will pour the foundation, but there's still going to be a small space between where that foundation or slab is and where those pipes go up through it. And that's going to be small enough for termites to get into that structure. So a lot of times when they find those pipes, they go up and that will lead them up into the structure, because plumbing areas are going to have moisture, they're going to have that opening. And so it makes it a great place and a great way for termites to get into the house. So if you have a hatch or some way to inspect that on a regular basis, then it's going to make it easier to look in those particular areas. The attic needs to be inspected for shelter tubes, for any water leaks, for any wood rot or damage that you may find. This is a lot of times where you will find drywood termite infestations, because when they swarm, it's possible that they will land on the roof of the structure and go down in that way, so they're not coming up from the ground. So you want to take, you see a screwdriver in that upper left picture. I wouldn't recommend you're cramming it into wood like that, but I will usually use a screwdriver as a probe to see if there is a softened wood, and then I can use the handle of that screwdriver to tap on the wood to see if any fecal pellets are falling out of it and making sure that that is sound. On the bottom picture, you see a house that is on pier and beam construction, and so there is a crawl space underneath it. The crawl space may or may not be accessible. It's always a good way, or a good thing when you're inspecting a crawl space, is accessible, and it's also better when it's vented and it allows air to circulate through there. Sometimes you need to dig areas out because it's built up in certain areas, but you're going to need to go into the crawl space or pay somebody to go in for you if you don't want to do that. And you want to go down there and you want to look at the piers and beams down there and look for any termite activity, any wood rot, that, so you can take care of issues before they really become a problem. Other things, if you have planter boxes right up against the structure, you want to make sure that those are inspected on. You are bringing soil and moisture really close to the house there, so that can termites finding those particular areas and also creating a space that may be difficult to inspect. Another one that they have in some parts of the US are earth-filled porches. A lot of times they will put dirt and then build the steps or porches on top of that. And that lead termites into the structure in areas where it may be a little bit more difficult to see that they are actually getting. Any planters or bathroom areas, any AC lines that are running into the structure, you want to make sure that any area where there's a penetration or water that you're looking at. You also want to look around the foundation of the home. So the foundation is going to be, if you're on a slab, it's going to be this concrete area right here. So you want to look for those shelter tubes to see if they actually have any mud tubes going up or any termite activity. You also want to look in these areas where you have pipes or wires penetrating into the structure to make sure that nothing's going in those holes. So we talked about the shelter tubes. There's some more there. And if you have cracks in the foundation, like you see here, this is another area that you want to keep an eye on, because that crack is an opening for those termites to get into the structure. So that is inspected regularly. Other areas, you want to look for moisture sources. So if you have AC units, whether they are wall units like you see here, or window units, or it's something that is away from the house, if they are leaking, then that can allow that moisture to build up and draw in. So any area that you have next to the foundation of the home that holds moisture, you try to reduce that or eliminate it. So a lot of people will have an automatic sprinkler system and they have it spraying directly onto the house. That is not, you want to set that sprinkler system so it's against the foundation and it's spraying outward. That water is laying up against the foundation, you need to either grade the soil so it drains away, or put in a drain of some sort to get that water to get away from the structure so you don't have that buildup. And outside the house, check the roof eaves and gutters for any defects that may cause water leakage or water that may lead to wood rot. And you also, while I know the landscape on the bottom left looks beautiful, it is also right up against the structure, so it's going to be really difficult to inspect behind that. If you are able, make a space between the structure and your landscape so you have an area that can be inspected and you can see that foundation all the way around the house. If that is not possible, do your best to inspect. You'll need to pull some of that vegetation away, maybe have someone help you, have them pull it away while you inspect, or vice versa. Okay, so wood to soil contact. We need to make sure that you're looking in any areas where you have wood to soil contact. So fences are definitely going to be a case of that. So a lot of people will have fences that attach to the house. Another one, they will have trellises or stairways that are on the home. Those are all areas that you need to make sure that you are watching, that the termites are not getting in those spaces. Electrical boxes are another one, that electrical conduit pipe that goes up into the bottom of the electrical box. Termites can go up the back of that, and they can be remaining relatively hidden from view, and they can go into the box and then go in to the house within the box itself, and you're not going to be able to see them. So you want to kind of open those up and take a look at those on a somewhat regular basis. And when I say a regular basis, you know, once a year is probably a good enough time to do that. So when we're going into professional treatments, if you are talking pre-treatment and you are building a home, there are certain options We have a traditional treatment kind of up on the upper left-hand corner, and this is where they would come out and they would treat the soil with a pesticide before they lay the foundation or the concrete slab down on that dirt. Another one that is available is a plastic. Sometimes these will be impregnated with pesticide, and they lay that down, and that will form a barrier between the foundation and the dirt. We also have borates, which is the bottom left one here, the green treatment. If you have timber, that can be treated with a borate product, which will be repellent to not only termites, but other wood-destroying organisms. We also have a stainless steel mesh that can be used. That's what you're seeing here. That goes around any pipe penetration. So anywhere that a pipe is going to be able to go through the slab, they will put this stainless steel mesh screening around it. And then if you look to the right of that at the drawing, when they lay that slab, that stainless steel is in there, and it's not going to be able to have termites go up that particular pipe. And then we also have bait stations that are available that can be put around the structure, or you can have combinations of these things. When we're talking about post-construction, which is usually the majority of termite treatments that people are worried about because they have termites on their house, these are going to be liquid treatments, baitings, or combinations. So on the bottom here, we have a baiting system. This is going to be where they come out, they will create holes in the ground where they will put in baiting systems. And depending upon the bait system that is being utilized, they may always have bait on them. They may have a lure, and then when they find termites in the station, they switch that out to bait. It really depends because different types have different ways of doing it. And anytime that you're having a bait system, you have to have it checked on some regular basis. And again, that's going to really depend upon the bait system that is being used. So you can ask for the label for that baiting system, and it should tell you in that label how often it should be inspected, because it may be every month until, you know, they don't find signs of termites anymore, and then it goes to quarterly, or it may be every 6 months, or it may be every year sometimes. Again, it can vary widely depending upon the system that is being used. The other one on here that you're looking at are liquid treatments, and those are going to be all the same treatment. It's just this is in different areas, so they're using different methods. And the upper right picture is them when they dig a structure and they fill that with a termiticide, and then they will backfill with the soil. And that is going to, depending on the termiticide, barrier that the termites will not go through, or it will be using a non-repellent that when the termites go through that, they will pick it up on their body, carry it back to the other termites, and they will spread it that way, and it will kill the termites. When you look at the upper left-hand picture, this is what is done if you have sidewalks or driveways or areas inside that have a slab floor. They will use a specific tool to drill holes through that concrete, and then they will use a machine to inject that termiticide underneath those areas. That way you don't have a broken barrier. You still have that pesticide there helping you. And the picture on the bottom right, this is a treatment with a liquid. They add a foaming agent to it, and they will inject that into a wall void space. So if you have termites that are actually living in the wall void, they will add the foaming agent, and they will put the termiticide in the wall void, and the foam will fill up that wall void space. And when the foam depletes, that termiticide is then in that wall void space. The other professional treatment option, this is typically when you have drywood termites that fumigation is going to be utilized. And in this case, they will use large tarps to cover the whole entire structure, and you can see them doing that in these photos. and they will actually inject a gas into that tented structure and hold it there for a certain period of time, and it will essentially kill all of the insects that are in the house, whether those are termites or bed bugs or cockroaches or whatever. So you are going to have this one done professionally. It's, you know, they have specific regulations that they have to follow with this gas, because you don't want people can't be in the house, because you could die if you enter a house that they have this gas in. So you have to have somebody kind of there keeping an eye on things, and they will then clear the house with specific tools that they have to measure gas levels in the house. And then once they have gotten the gas to dissipate after that time being held to kill the insects, then they will release it and allow you to get into it. So with this house being tented and fumigated, make sure that you follow the instructions that you are given by the pest control company, because you may have to remove certain things from the house when you are being fumigated. So termite contracts. If you are going and you are getting a termite treatment done, you need to make sure that you are asking for particular documents. So they should be diagramming your structure and showing you where they're treating, marking where they're finding termites or conducive conditions. And a conducive condition is going to be something that will lead to a possible termite infestation. So you should have something on that looks similar to what is on the slide here. You can also ask for the label of any pesticide that they are recommending that they are utilizing. That way you have that information. Any warranty information that they may offer, it may be good for here, and then you have the option to go into what is called a termite annual, which in that case, I kind of think of those or equate those to insurance policies. That's how most people can kind of understand them. You pay your annual termite fee, and then if you were to get termites on the structure within that period of time, then they will come back and treat, and you won't have to pay the whole entire fee for having another termite treatment done. You can also ask them if they have a sheet that has definitions for the types of treatment that they're doing, because with termite treatments, there's a lot of terminology involved, and so hopefully they will be able to explain that terminology to you, or if you have questions, you can contact your local extension agent. So what can customers do? Prune your vegetations away from the walls of the structure. Keep 6 to 8 inches of foundation visible. That means that you may need to pull the soil level down so you can see that foundation all the way around the structure. Reduce any wood to soil contact. Repair any water leaks. Direct water away from your structure. Anytime that you're using wood, whether you're building a fence or anything like that, use pressure treated wood. If you are on pier and beam and you have a crawl space, you can put a polyethylene water barrier in that crawl space area, and that will help reduce the moisture that you may have coming up out of that soil. You also want to make sure that you have wall vents in the crawl space area, so you have air flowing through there to, again, not have that moisture building up. And there is a way that you can calculate the wall vents that you need within a particular crawl space area based upon how many square feet that is covered, and that is generally 1 square foot of ventilation for 150 feet of crawl space area. So if you need more information, we do have an article on the extension.org site. You can see that right there. And then next month, we have information on bats. So that will be on June 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And Danny, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. That was the most helpful. I mean, I can't wait to get outside and look around the house now that I know exactly what to be looking for. You guys, are there any questions that y'all have? I agree, Deborah. That was a great presentation. So great that there may not be any questions. Well, y'all, I'm going to let you think about it for just a minute while I throw up some poll questions. Yeah, Kathy said she too, she can't wait to go start checking out the outside of the house. Y'all, I threw up a poll. If you do not mind answering a few of these questions. Yes, someone asked if you're going to be able to access the presentation later, and you will. These presentations are always put back on the event webpage the following Monday. You're welcome.
It's a lot to absorb, so you may need to watch it again.
It is, and if I could say something, the pictures on this presentation were outstanding.
Thank you.
You have great examples. Okay, well, anybody? Everybody's going to check sprinklers and water on my house. So, Miss Wizzie, thank you so much for doing that for us today. Well, one more. We did get a question. How well is it Centricon IGRs work on termites?
Generally, with any termite treatment, as long as you get the product to the termites, it's going to be fine. The problem with any sort of baiting station that you may run into is if the termites don't find the bait stations, then it's not going to help you. So it's not that it's not working because it's a bait station. It may not work because the termites didn't find it. So it's that whole random foraging thing that may become a problem for you.
Okay, and is it true that ants and termites are not found together?
Not always. Generally speaking, no, but it's not. There's always exceptions to the rule.
There's a couple things. This is Tim Davis, but I've actually found logs. On one side of the log has ants in it, and the other side of the log has termites. And they tend to partition as a fight, but you can find them together. I also have a YouTube video where alates had landed on a fire ant mound, and they were all fine until I poked the fire ant mound, and then the ants ate the termites. So.
Oh.
Here we have one of the last questions of the day. This is from Susan in the Pacific Northwest. Are any areas of the country more prone to termite problems?
I think it depends on what kind of termite. I mean, obviously, if you're like someplace where you have 6 months of winter, like Minnesota, you're probably going to have less termite problems because it's cold half the year, and so they're not going to be too busy doing much. But anytime that you have humid conditions, there's an opportunity for more termite problems because you have that moisture and all that stuff. Tim, would you concur?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the maps of where treatments occur, you tend to see it in the southeast more, and it's a factor of temperature and humidity and length of season more than anything else. They occur throughout the country, but just because of environment, we see a lot in the southeast.
Okay, well, you guys, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Wizzie, again, thank you so much. And we hope to see y'all next month when we go batty for bats. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you.